morning, Sapulpa. It's Micah from Sapulpa Times. Thanks for tuning in to the show today. I'm going to be going solo today for this particular episode. I wanted to talk about something that has come across the uh, the waves here just a little bit after. I think my mic is not working that well. Let me. Okay, maybe that'll be better. So anyway, um, I had a lot of a response. It's been a very busy week in the world of crime, I guess, and judicial discourse, I guess, is what you would say. There's been a lot of stories that we've released over this last week, just in the last few days. As a matter of fact, three major crime stories came out of the Sapulpa Times. One of which is still making the rounds in the state national headlines. It's about the arrest regarding a former Sapulpa soldier, so murder case that happened in 2020, and I encourage you guys to go check that out. And then kind of a surprising move, one that we weren't really expecting, is a former criminal justice instructor pled guilty to some juvenile pornography charges, and that's based on a case that happened last 2024 rather. But the one that might have drawn the most ire is the one that we're talking about today, and I wanted to get into it. So there's a lot of speculation going around when we put the story out about the former teacher, Myra Flores-Harmon, who was charged with embezzlement by two different school districts or two different organizations within those school districts, I should say. So, if you're not familiar with the story here, Flores Harmon was at one time a teacher at Lone Star schools here in Sapulpa, where she worked on the Booster Club and was part of the cheer organization as well. And over a period of an undetermined amount of time, managed to embezzle a good $30,000 out of that organization, including funds that were reserved for a teacher that was fighting cancer. And then after she was released from that job, and but before charges had been filed, is my understanding, she actually went and got involved in the Kellyville School District at the Kellyville Quarterback Club and proceeded to embezzle another $2,500 about from that organization as well. And she initially pled not guilty to these charges when she was first charged with them in November of 2020. No, actually, this would have been last year. I got my dates wrong there. But eventually, originally she pled not guilty. Then earlier this week, she changed that plea to guilty and was handed a 5 years suspended sentence with all but 30 days suspended. So a 5 year sentence with all but 30 days suspended, meaning she was going to spend the next 30 days in jail and then be released essentially on probation for the next 5 years. And so a lot of people on Facebook, especially when we put that story out, they're commenting were, hey, this is egregious. This is a really awful thing that she did here. Why did she get such a light sentence? And I actually consulted a lawyer with this who explained to me that it was actually a more harsh sentence than most people realize, despite how it appears on the beginning. So I thought I would talk about that today to kind of give you guys an inside look at how this worked, what the options were, and what it means for Miss Flores Harmon going forward. So she pled guilty to these charges, and in the hearing, the judge asked her, "Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?" And she said, "Yes, I am." And so she pled guilty to charges. She admitted that she had done the things that she had been accused of. And you would think, especially after the victim statements that were given, that that would mean that the judge would give her, possibly the maximum sentence because, again, $30,000, over $30,000 from organizations that heavily depend on these funds in order to do the things that the sports programs require. That is no small amount. It's certainly not a small amount for a school the size of Lone Star, which is just a regular K through 8th elementary school here in Sapulpa. So um, there was a good amount of distrust that was brought to the organizations at Kellyville and Lone Star by these. You can read more about that. If you read the story, you'll see in the victim statements that they said, people are now not sure that the money that they donate to our programs are going to go where they're supposed to go. And they are not sure that about donating to our programs any longer. And so being able to raise those funds has now been made that much more difficult than it was even in the past. Now that this breach of trust has happened between the organization and the community. And so while the person responsible for this breach of trust has been now brought to justice, a lot of people are still questioning whether or not the sentence that was given out by the judge was actually carried out in the due course of justice. And so let's talk about this. What was she actually sentenced to? It was a 5 year sentence with everything but 30 days suspended. So what that means is that she's going to jail for 30 days. And then upon serving that 30 days term, she'll be released from jail and she will be on probation essentially for the remainder of the 5 year stint while she continues to pay restitution of the funds. So she's already made some payment. I do know that court records show that she has done that. She's expected to make additional payments as after she gets out of the 30-day stint in jail and presumably goes back to a job of some sort and producing an income and is expected to make restitution though. So is that all that's happening? And what were the other options? Well, so the lawyer that I consulted with about this actually said that this is something of an unusual case because she is a first-time conviction, so essentially a first-time offender, even though she managed to do it twice for um, two different organizations. She was, charged in one court proceeding. Um, and so a lot of times what you would see in a case like this, especially for something like embezzlement, which is not a victimless crime, but is certainly not on the same level as something that's a more violent nature like robbery or murder, a couple of other stories which we covered earlier this week, as a matter of fact. And so these types of sentences tend to be suspended or deferred sentences. And I asked the lawyer what was the difference between a suspended sentence and a deferred sentence. So just to remind you, a suspended sentence is where you serve out a particular amount. Sometimes it's 30 days, as it was in this case. Sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes it's 5 years completely suspended, and you're released to go back to living a civilian life as long as you meet these requirements. And that suspended sentence, that is basically your guilty plea and your conviction is being literally held in suspense by the court to the chance that it might be released should you violate that probation in any way, even down to even something as minor as a speeding ticket, could potentially violate that probation. And at that point, even if you are 4 years and 364 days into your 5 year suspended sentence, if you violate that parole or violate that probation rather, on the last day you can be hauled back to court. That suspended sentence will then be dropped on you, and you may very well go to jail and actually be forced to spend another 5 years inside of jail. So the recidivism rate for crimes of this nature are generally pretty high, higher than 50%, as a matter of fact. So the chance that this woman might actually commit another crime are relatively high. I'm not saying that that is what is going to happen, but statistically speaking, folks of this nature, about 60 or 70% of the crimes that get committed, those folks end up committing another crime. And the way that they explain it to me is because there's an underlying issue there that hasn't been dealt with. And when you don't deal with the underlying issue, then you return to your old habits in a manner of speaking. So, the other option that would have been here would be a 5 year, possibly a 5 year deferred sentence. And the lawyer that I spoke with actually said that they was kind of surprised that it didn't go this way. And so, what would that have meant? That would have meant that she serves out a certain amount of the time, maybe in jail, maybe not. She's handed a 5 year deferred sentence, which means, okay, that sentence is now being held deferred. We're holding on to that guilty plea and that conviction. And so if you go through the 5 years, you meet all of the requirements, keep your nose clean, make good on your debt to society, pay the restitution probably, then at the end of that, your conviction is actually taken away, your record gets expunged, and it essentially becomes as though that never happened. And so while people are complaining that a 30-day, 5-year suspended sentence is too easy for this, there are a couple of other things to keep in mind here. First of which I've already mentioned is the one that says if she messes up at any point during the next 5 years, she could very easily spend the next 5 years in jail. The other thing is this conviction actually makes her a felon. And so she will never be able to get a job dealing with money ever again. And any of you guys who have ever filled out a job application and you see that there's that box on there that says, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And if you've not made mistakes like this, then you've been able to keep that box unchecked, and it makes it that much more easier to move into the next level of your job application process. And Myra Flores-Harmon has lost that ability now. She has to check that box and will have to check it for the rest of her life, unless the court down the line deems that her felon should be expunged for some reason, if there's a change in the law or something of that nature. And so she'll have to continue that. And this crime that she committed that took, just maybe a year or a year and a half of her life, and that she is currently serving out the next 5 years under intense scrutiny for, will follow her for probably the rest of her life. And if nothing else, it should definitely serve as a warning to those who might be tempted with this sort of thing, because doing this job, I can tell you that embezzlement happens a lot, particularly in organizations where there is a certain amount of trust that are placed within the individuals that are involved in the officer positions. And if there's not a proper amount of accountability and oversight, then it's very easy for this sort of thing to happen. Very often goes under the radar, and a lot of times it doesn't even get reported as a crime, just as an effort to deal with the problem quickly and quietly so that the community doesn't suffer a breach of trust, as what has happened to Kellyville and Lone Star. And so, if nothing else, it should serve as a warning to anybody who might be tempted with that, that, hey, you might be trying to get just enough money to pay your phone bill or your electric bill or something, or maybe pay for a cruise, like what Myra Flores-Harmon did, pay for part of a cruise. But make no mistake that if you do get caught, and you probably will, that you're making a mistake that's going to follow you around for the rest of your natural life in all likelihood. So, anyway, I hope that explains it for you guys. Those of you who might have had questions about what the nature of the sentence was, what it really means, and hopefully it'll keep anyone who maybe is doing this or considering doing this from doing it in the future. So that'll do it for the show today, guys. It was a short one, but a nice information piece. So hope you enjoyed it. It is going to be a nice day this weekend. Tomorrow, especially, we're supposed to see some rain on Sunday, and then it'll start raining later on this week. So hope you get out and enjoy the shopping and the restaurants in downtown. We released a map on the Sapulpa Times Facebook page that showed the 25 different businesses that are downtown available for shopping and eating and drinking. And I hope you guys are able to get out and go enjoy them. And that is all I have for today. So thanks for tuning into the Timeloop Live. I'll see you again on Monday where we talk about all things happening in the town that we love. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye bye.